with us now for more is RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort. Good seeing you again, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Kathy, and to your viewers. Nice to be back.
Yeah, and I know that you'd been listening in to the governor's interview. What stood out for you in what he said just a couple of minutes ago?
Well, it's really he has signaled the possibility of the stance of continuously accommodative or still monetary easing stance, and this came as a pleasant surprise since yesterday, and he has been signaling the possibility of another quarter point cut for the coming months. Of course, it's contingent upon the data, especially in the Middle East, and it's really that proactive stance that really stands out in the sense that inflation is still relatively benign, and of course they're watchful of what's going to transpire in the Middle East, because the risk in the Middle East now is escalation of the Israel-Iran war, especially if U.S. would be involved, and other countries would also be involved, the respective allies of both Israel and Iran, and and also the risk of potential supply chain disruption, especially in the Strait of Hormuz. And it's still a wait and see game. No? That's a challenge for it. It's still uncertain, and because the impact there is on inflation, oil prices.
And in fact, a looming price hike, as the Energy Department said, is going to begin next week, and it's 4 pesos of an increase, or even beyond that. How does this change the whole equation then, and how the Bangko Sentral is seeing where inflation goes next?
Yeah, true, Kathy, because the rule of thumb, for every $10 increase in the world price of oil, inflation could pick up at least 0.2 to 0.3 percentage point. So right now it's 1.3 for the month of May, and for the year to date it's 1.9%, the average from January to May. So should there be, that's the rule, that's a sensitivity analysis. So it's 0.2 to 0.3 at least for every $10 increase. So that's a variable that we have to contend with, and meaning to say, well, it's already up by more than $10 at $75, coming from $63, $64. Well, now exactly a week since the war started, and shortly prior to that, that has been the net change. So, if this is sustained, so that's the least that could happen. The headline inflation from year to date 1.9%, it's going to pick up to a little over 2%. That's still well within the BSP's inflation target, but the risk there, should there be an escalation, the story could be different. That risk of volatility, say, if it goes higher than, say, $80, so that's a time that to reassess, as the governor has been mentioning, just assess the data and see if further rate cuts would be warranted, because that would also
be. In the meantime, it's really a big haircut of an inflation estimate from 2.4%. He's pared that back to 1.6% for all of 2025. In what way then is this changing your own inflation forecast for the full year?
Yeah, I think that's realistic, Kathy, to see less than 2% year to date because of the higher base effects. A year ago, everything was higher, like the tariff cut on rice, the import tariff cut to 15% from 35%. That was since July. So, however, and we've seen the end of El Nino. That was June of last year, exactly a year ago, middle of June, and so everything came from a high base. Now, rice prices in the world market, still among the lowest in 3.5 years since November of 2011. And we have seen, of course, the maximum suggested retail price for rice being brought down gradually to really force down. Well, that's part of the part of the regulation, so to speak. Amid the market forces, and to ensure that there's indeed the lower rice prices are passed down to the consumers. And oil is another thing. Of course, the adjustment in wages. We have seen also another factor to contend with would be the proposed legislated wage hike, and there could be some potential inflationary impact on those. So, but these are offset by we're taking that proactive stance still for having dovish signals, because in view of the external challenges, potential slowdown in the world economy because of Trump's tariffs, the trade wars, the protectionist measures. So we all need to sandbag against all of those. And
Which leads us to the other side of the equation, which is growth. Where does growth go from here? He did make a mention earlier that part of the reason why he cut rates was because of the need to shore up growth, because it's being subpar, still growing, albeit a little more slowly. BSP has had 5 policy rate cuts out of the 6 rate-setting meetings. Our GDP, the World Bank says, still robust, but still in a decelerating trend. Can we still hope for 6% for the full year, Mike?
well, it's still possible, Kathy, but 5% levels, maybe a little less than 6 would be more realistic. We have seen that already, the adjustments of the multilaterals, the credit rating agencies, taking into account the Trump factor, because it's still uncertain on Trump's tariffs. Would he continue the 10% baseline tariff as they it's gonna the deadline of the 90-day pause would be July 9, and there were talks that he may raise it to 15%. So it's too uncertain. So no, so the attitude is still wait and see from the point of view of exporters from all over the world. And before they, their inventories, before they add up to capacity, before they make new investments or expansion plans. So it's going to slow things down, slower investments, slower global trade, employment, and overall economic growth worldwide. But here in the Philippines, we're not that much dependent on exports compared to our neighboring countries. The more developed ASEAN countries, their exports are like 3 to 5 times higher than us. So the bigger headache is on them, but indirectly, there could still be a slowdown. So that's why it's very important to that balancing act, the need to, if there's that headroom, that leeway, that room to maneuver, to cut rates, to ease monetary policy. Well, other than the rate cuts, it's a total of 125 basis points cuts since August. So that's going to lower borrowing, financing costs, and that would stimulate economic growth. And try to shore up also. Try to. We have seen consumer loans growing much faster, and overall loans twice as GDP at 11%. Consumer loans at 25%. So yeah, hopefully this would be an offsetting positive factor.
So is
to
that it?
shore up
25
growth.
basis point of a further rate cut in August, and that's it? Nothing more in
Well,
October and December?
Well, it's still possible that that of the Fed, they signaled another 50 basis points cut this year. That just came more than a day ago in the US during the last meeting. Another 25 basis points cut next year. That was downscaled from 50 basis points cut previously, and another 25 basis points cut by 2027. That would be a total of 100 basis points. And definitely, the BSP would match that in as much as other central banks would do to maintain healthy differentials, and that would help prop up and stimulate economic activities by way of lower credit or financing costs.
All right. Well, I've maxed out your crystal ball predictions there. Thank you so much, Mike Ricafort of RCBC. I appreciate your insights.